welcome. This is Claritalks podcast, your podcast for impulses, thoughts and tips about your clarinet and your music, straight here from my practice and music room at home in Hannover. Impulses, thoughts and tips that you can try for yourself, which can help you on your way, the way you have to go by yourself, of course. This does not replace an actual lesson, but we'll get to that in the end. I'm glad that you're listening, and thanks to my son Yannick for the translation. Today's topic will be sound, the most important topic for me and apparently for nearly every clarinetist I've met so far as well, be it student or professional. The ever-present issue in my teaching for over 40 years. Yes, I started teaching at the age of 14 at a music school in Prüm, and even back then my students, most of them were older than me, had to hold long notes. That's how my teacher Adolf Heinl from Trier taught me. The sound. The clarinet has 3 registers, bottom, middle and top, which not only sound very different from each other, more different than most other instruments, but which are in fact very different from each other and even look correspondingly different on a spectroscope. That's why the clarinet is utilized in so many different ways. As a cat, for example, or its sound might be compared to the singing voice. Its name directly translates to small trumpet, Clarinette. So, does the one perfect sound even exist? In my long experience, it is important to work on 2 things. How do I want it to sound? And do I feel good doing it? First, let's think about how you imagine your sound, how you perceive it, and then how you can alter it. In other words, things you can learn and influence yourself. Of course, a big portion is predetermined by the instrument, the mouthpiece and the reed. That is certainly a topic for another podcast, but there's still a good part that we can manipulate and experience ourselves. Our body makes the sound, not only the material. In lessons, you are learning a lot by receiving feedback, or as I like to call it, mirroring. When the teacher says things along the lines of this, like this is how it has to sound. Yes, Johannes, yes, like that. That immediately reminds me of my studies with Hans Deinzer, and that is still the supreme discipline in finding your sound, listening and mirroring from the outside and working with that. Also useful, of course, is the feedback you give yourself. Say after a decent recording, for example. But it's better to have many subjective opinions you can work with. And these don't have to be from experienced teachers who listen to you. It can be a fellow student, some musician, a friend, just anyone you would like to get some form of mirroring from. That would be my first tip for today. Look for people that will listen to you and work with that external feedback that these people give you. However, you can also do a lot on your own to find your sound. Our body makes the sound. The following 3 things seem important to me: beauty, size, and focus. About beauty. In my experience, it helps a lot if we consciously learn to listen, to focus our hearing again and again. In my current lessons, we work with a sound checklist. On there, you might find things like, is my sound big or small? Indirect or direct? Is it bundled, focused or widely dispersed? Is it hard or soft? Powerful or weak? And so on. With that, you can listen yourself and say, yes, it's good. Or, well, I would like to be a little bit softer, or more bundled, or bigger, or whatever. Make yourself a list of opposite adjectives that can describe sound, and listen to yourself and change your sound to your liking. By the way, the sound checklist was created during a discussion with a colleague after a long audition day. We had asked ourselves, How do you actually judge the sound? And then we came up with a list. Shout out to Stefan Geiger. 3 things about the sound: beauty, size, and focus. Let's talk about size. The sound should fill the whole room, the room you're in right now. That means listen into the distance, on the walls, in the corners, in front of you, behind you, as if you yourself were in the farthest corner of your room and listening to your clarinet. The room is already filled with sound before you play. Try this. Make flat hands like panels and hold them in front of your ears, left and right side, vertical from your head, as if you were trying to enlarge your ear cups, fingers pointing upwards. Now say or sing something. You will hear the sound, your sound of the room. Singers often do this in rehearsals. Maybe you have already seen this before. I have built myself a pair of Mickey Mouse ears out of old headphones and 2 cardboard discs. Every now and then I practice with those for about 5 or 10 minutes to learn listening into the distance. Play into the distance. Expand your sound in front of you, not as straight as a dart, but in a spiral, 3-dimensional. Try to expand in small steps. Play a phrase, something short you can repeat over and over again. Start by imagining yourself to be in a phone booth. Do you already know what those are? Next, play the phrase again, but now you are in an imaginary cabin that is slightly bigger. Then in an even bigger room, and then a bigger room. Then play for the stairwell in front of your room, and so on. Maybe until you play for the universe. What do you like better? Listening into the distance or playing into the distance? Or do both feel the same for you? Additionally, can you feel the outside pressure on your eardrums as you play? The actual physical pressure of the sound wave that reaches your eardrums from the outside world? Beauty, size, and focus. About focus, my teacher Hans Deinzer always said, there is the sound center and the resonance box. Let's look at a piano for instance. The sound center is the exact spot where the hammer hits the string. The resonance box is the body of the piano, the empty room enclosed by mostly wood. Now let's transpose this idea onto the clarinet. The sound center lies beside the nose, in the sinuses, the same spot your voice had its sound center, in the mask, as singers like to call it. The resonance box would be our body, but that's a topic for another episode. I can tell you this much, the resonance box has more, or actually exclusively, to do with breathing technique, because you cannot find resonant spaces, which are spaces with fading air, in our body while playing the clarinet. The first oscillating air is surely located in the mouthpiece. But, like I said, that's something we talk about in another podcast. Try to feel the note right next to your nose. Imagine the note comes out of the mouthpiece, right back into you, crawls up along the ceiling of your mouth, all the way back until it reaches your throat and beyond. But first it's in the front, in the dome of your palate. Where do you feel it? Let's try this. Sing a note in your head voice, so something rather high on the vowel E. E. Now take that note and pull it to the front, or feel it right where it is, or maybe in your whole head. Try to center it near the nose. Now try the same with the clarinet. Play a note and try to feel it at the same spot you just feel the note you sang. This works best for high notes. Try it with a D3 for instance. You might recognize it from our green course on our website Clarinetistas del Futuro. One more idea about this. Not only do I sometimes look like Mickey Mouse when I practice, sometimes I play with earplugs in my ears. Let me explain. When you cover your ears and say something, it sounds strange, doesn't it? Try out the same thing while playing your clarinet. For that you obviously need earplugs. Sounds even stranger, doesn't it? What you are hearing while doing that are high frequencies. The vibration of the reed is very fast, very high, and ringing when the reed hits the mouthpiece. Your bones that resonate are rather short. So are the so-called Eustachian tubes, in which the air resonates while talking. At least that's how I understood it, but please don't pin me down on that. All in all, you'll hear yourself in a very edgy way, ringing a lot, but don't worry, only you will hear this kind of sound. Here is the takeaway thou, the exit of that. Don't try to change that edgy ringing sound in your head to something that sounds better to you by dampening your tone. It will sound rather dark and muffled from the outside. Instead, get used to that ringing tone in your head, for example, by practicing 5 minutes every now and then with your ears shut with earplugs. Ask someone how you sound like playing with earplugs in. Surprisingly, it's usually better. How does it affect your sound? Ask someone. Remember, beauty, size, and focus are the 3 important items for the sound. I wish you all the best in finding your sound, and you've done so, find the sound for Mozart, or for Brahms, for the orchestra, for a solo concerto, or for chamber music. Well, the clarinet can and has to have so many different sounds, which, by the way, it actually can do best out of all instruments. That's another topic for a future episode. There's a lot to do for you and for me, and that's great. Thanks for tuning in. Just a little side note to be on the same page. What we are doing here, the way topics are presented short and in a nutshell, and then applying them in a few tips, has little to do what happens in an actual lesson, a masterclass, or in the courses on our CDF website. And of course, it differs the most from the form if one studies with me here in Hannover. Our artistic musical development is a very long process in which one will and can discover insights not only through thoughts and words, but in many other, maybe even more personal ways. But for now, have fun practicing, and I would be very happy if you would continue listening. Hear you next time. Goodbye.